Hello and welcome to the Talking City podcast coming to you from the Manchester Evening News. My name is Joe Bray, joined by Simon Bajkowski, and I don't think we did a podcast last week, so can we still pretend that England are doing well in the Euros, or do we have to address the fact that
Were
Sunday
they were they
happened?
ever doing well in the Euros?
Well, this is it.
20
Like they
minutes
got to the
into the Serbia
semi-finals, and it
game?
was like, is it a is it successful now? Is it successful that they got to the final and lost? It was. Let's start with the positives from a City perspective. Rodri is a European champion.
Rodri is the European champion and, um, you know, might win the Ballon d'Or. I don't think any of us thought that would happen.
No.
Not because he's not an amazing player, but it's just like, when does your holding midfielder get recognised? But seeing, you know, tens of thousands of people in squares in Spain shouting Rodri Ballon d'Or, you're like, oh, that would
Well,
be.
this was it. He did an interview I think last week, and he was always saying that you need the sort of the machine behind you, and you need the popular support as well as just
Yeah,
your manager and your teammates saying it. But he's won Player of the Tournament at the Euros. He was, I think, was it the Player of the Tournament in the Nations League,
yeah.
Champions League as well. He's getting those sort of big name awards in terms of his contribution to tournaments, and he's scoring these big goals. And I think the Euros has definitely helped him. It's put him into the conversation, and he wasn't there before.
Well, the thing is, as well, nobody else is scoring the big goals. You know, the Ballon
Mm.
d'Or is won by the great attackers, but we've not really seen them. Mbappe was pretty useless at the Euro. So was Kane. Like, Vinicius didn't light up Brazil. So yeah, the people who would normally score goals to win the prize are not scoring the goals. So it gives Rodri kind of every chance, which is quite exciting because, yeah,
It would be a bit remarkable, wouldn't it? Because
when does a holding midfielder win it?
exactly. I mean, Modric won it. He's more attacking, but he's had 20 years of trying to show people how good he is. And again, it was a year when not many attackers did as well as they have done previously. But I think Rodri will be slightly different in that he's still at the peak of his powers and is sort of winning
Oh,
more
yeah,
trophies.
and I feel like it had to be Spain. Like he had
Hmm.
to do it with Spain because you were still getting people going into the tournament saying from England saying that Declan Rice was as good or a better midfielder. Um, and even if we'd won the tournament, I don't think we'd be shouting out our holder midfielder saying they should win the Ballon d'Or because it's just not really in the English psyche. So it had to be something with Spain, I think, to help him along. But it's gone better than I think he or anyone at Spain would have dreamed of.
And I mean, you hear all these criticisms of Foden and other players and the sort of system players that you're not seeing the same thing of Rodri for Spain. You're seeing that he is showing his
He is the
incredible
system.
quality. Yeah,
Like everything works around him. Yeah. Although Rodri goes off and Spain look better in the second half, so work that one out.
it was the pub that I was watching it in. There was a buzz around when it's like Rodri's going off, Rodri's going off. We've got a chance here, and then 10 seconds later,
Yeah.
Spain catching another break and scored the opening goal, and that kind of was that really.
Yeah, and also deprived us of another 45 minutes of Rodri and Phil Foden just following each other around,
Hmm.
making sure that each of them didn't get on the ball.
That
Um,
was noticeable, wasn't it? In the opening stages, it was man marking from both of them.
yeah, yeah, it was like we are going to neutralize each other and take each other out of the game.
And I think we can look at Rodri's celebrations and not be too worried about the injury, given he's bouncing around on that stage and declaring Gibraltar a Spanish.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
yeah. Not a hint of injury or not. But yeah, I think he looks pretty okay. It seemed to be just sort of something minor with his hamstring that, given a rest, will allow him to be fit again for the new year.
yeah. We'll come on to pre-season and when we can expect Rodri back later in the podcast. Just on to England. It seems like everyone's very accepting that Spain were the best team and deserved to win the Euros. But where do you think it went wrong in the final? It's a tricky one for me because it was like I think they played well. I think the tactics were good in the first half in sort of containing them. That goal at the start of the second half was a real difficult one. It completely undoes everything that Southgate said. Cole Palmer gets them back in it, and what a moment for him. And then it's just caught on the break. I think it's an easier one to take for me than the Italy final because the opposition were better and it was just one step too far.
Yeah, and also you sort of felt that England were lucky to be in the final because at no
Hmm.
point had they looked like a team that was capable of winning it. And yeah, it felt like problems at the front and the back. Um, Jordan Pickford has got a lot of praise for his saves and fine, but his distribution and his insistence on going long when players were screaming for him to give it short very, very often was a big factor in giving Spain lots of possession and inviting pressure onto England. I just don't think, Pickford needs to learn how to pass the ball out, or you need to get a goalkeeper in who can pass. I think for the modern game, and at the other end, Pickford's kicks weren't going anywhere in part because Harry Kane was just knackered, uh, just like unable to do anything. Yeah, it was. He's just not looked on it all tournament. He's looked like 10, 15 yards behind everything. It was weird to see sort of Foden playing in front of him so often. Foden like pressing ahead of Kane because Kane was struggling so much with the press. It felt like, yeah, it just like took Foden out of the game by having to do Kane's running for him. Um,
I think it works with Kane when he's dropping deep. When you've got runners like Sterling and Rashford, that's when it works because they will often offer him the pass where he can turn and play it. But with Foden and Bellingham, they're not going to always do that, and they're going to do it differently. They're going to do it more narrow. So it
yeah,
nullifies
but
anything that Kane's going to do.
then when he drops deep, he still has to get back up into the box,
Hmm.
and he was just never there. There's a moment in the second half where it went to it might have been Watkins for a chance, and it was like, well, Kane wouldn't have been anywhere near the
No,
box anyway. He would have been 15 yards behind it. So it was a difficult one because it would have been a huge call not to start him in the final. Um, but he was rubbish, and it played a large part in England being second best because if you're giving the ball away at both ends of the pitch, then it's going to be very difficult. And like um, people said when Watkins came on, the Spanish defense looked worried because there was
hmm
someone running at them and behind them, whereas they just, Laporte had slippers on for most of the game.
I think if you'd said at the start of the tournament England are getting to the final, you think great, and then you say in that final Harry Kane's going to be taken off and everyone's going to be pleased with it on the hour mark because he's not done anything. You'd probably think, okay, there's something's happened there, something's not quite clicked. And yeah, like you say, I think England had a fortunate run to the final, and credit to them for getting there. But I wasn't as disappointed, like I say, because they weren't the best team in Europe, and on the
Yeah,
day, I
yeah.
mean, the Cole
Well,
Palmer moment was brilliant, but it was.
yeah, and you flip it whereby like in Qatar they went out to a very good team,
Mhm.
um, and it felt like just one of those days. And on another day, they could have gone on. It felt like a bit like City in the Champions League. Like they went out this season, but they would have beaten Real on another day, and quite possibly would have won it again. So you're sort of like, well, it's still a good tournament. Whereas this one you look at and you say, well, how many games have they played well in? None. Is that a good tournament? I don't think you can say it's a good tournament. Um, they've got to the final, but they've they've not impressed anyone. And there's been the best players have been the two centre backs
Mhm.
and probably the goalkeeper. So that kind of tells
Who you've
you,
just been slagging off.
well, exactly, yeah. And the fact that he is one of the better players kind of tells you a bit about the manager as well. So
I think we can assume Southgate will go. It feels like a good end point.
yeah, yeah, you think he should. And it would be he can leave and say I've got him to a final, and everyone's still happy about getting to a final.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it felt it never felt like Southgate was in control of the tournament, and it was a bit like Ten Hag last season. Like Southgate kept making very good subs, and it was like great. And then sort of at some point you sort of say, well, why are the starting 11 so naff? Like, is it good management to make good subs if the first people who you pick always underperform? I don't know. There will be, a lot of inquest into the tournament, and there already has been a lot of inquest. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what goes on, but it wasn't a vintage tournament for anyone, really, other than probably Mark Gahey and John Stones.
I felt like back at home we were sort of clinging to those moments, but the majority, like 99% of the tournament, was painful. We
Mm,
were getting through, and there was moments where we could cheer and celebrate, but deep down, you know that it wasn't all clicking. And you compare that to Spain, and they were a complete unit, very good in every position, playing players who suited the system rather than who were necessarily the best player in that position. I'm thinking Cucurella, who probably isn't the best left back in Spain, but played a big role for them and obviously got the match winning assist and that sort of thing. So I think you can sort of compare and contrast, and we will stop talking about England in a second. In terms of a successor, what would you think? Because I think for me, you need someone who is going to build on what Southgate's done. You can't reset. There's talk of Graham Potter, and I'm thinking you need someone to come in and say, right, we're going to win this tournament, whether it's the World Cup or the next Euros. I'm not sure you need another Southgate. I think you need someone who knows how to win.
yes. Yeah, it's difficult. You also need someone who's, used to international football and international management and those kind of things. And, Southgate was under 21s coach. Lee Carsley got England under 21s to win a tournament last year, playing very, very good football all the way through. Steve Cooper has managed England youth teams to major tournament victories, playing very, very good football. Those are kind of your two managers with England connections I would maybe look at. And then who we talking about? There's like Eddie Howe and Graham Potter and people like that. That yeah, maybe yeah.
There's no obvious candidate, is there?
There isn't an obvious candidate, no, but you wouldn't have said Southgate was an obvious candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And someone made the point about sort of it's all very well like England building and building and building, but like other teams have crashed and burned, but then come back and won things sooner than England with the steady build have done. And it shouldn't all be defined by winning, but I would have been happier if we played amazing and gone out in the last 16. Because it's tournament football, you can lose a game, but is the whole kind of collective good and playing well? And the answer to this tournament was no. At no point. Well, 45 minutes against the Netherlands in the semi-final, and they were okay against Spain in the first 45, but it was defensive the whole way through, and it needs a more progressive approach.
That's interesting. I think I'd prefer to play rubbish and get to the final and have a chance of winning. I think I remember saying after the Serbia game, if they play like that and win 1-0 every game, they'll win the tournament. But maybe that's because I support a rubbish team who doesn't get the luxury of playing good football, and the only time that winning is a possibility is sort of doing it that way. But I think that's the sort of the contradiction, isn't it? Like, do you want to play well and win, or can you have it all at the same time? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, well, Spain have had it all.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just yeah. Don't get me wrong, I would have been delighted if we'd won on Sunday night, but it was just like it just felt like they were so bad for so much of it that you just kind of thought, well, even if they do win, does that justify Southgate keeping his job?
Hmm.
I don't know.
I think Southgate would have gone win or lose. I think at the group stage when he's getting bottles thrown, I'd imagine he's made his decision right there and thought, yeah, this is not worth it, whatever happens. And I'd be very surprised if anything else happens on that front. It just feels like it's the end of his time, and it's just whoever takes it on. And can you then get the best out of Foden and Bellingham in those positions, and can you solve the right back issue with Alexander-Arnold and that sort of thing? And I'm not sure Southgate has done that, but surely there is a manager who can. I just would not put a name on that manager because I don't know who that is.
Yeah. Pep will get the best out of Foden and Walker and Bellingham. Let's get him in.
There we are. Heard it here first. Southgate, another year of Southgate, and then Pep can have a crack at the World Cup. We'll be back after a short break and discuss actual Manchester City stuff rather than England. They return to pre-season training on Monday, and we've got a few updates to bring you from that. Welcome back to the Talking City podcast. We'll try and be a bit more positive now. We've got England out of the way. One season has finished, and a day later, another season starts for Manchester City. Back to pre-season training, a few familiar faces, a few forgotten faces. Erling Haaland and Jack Grealish, the big names. You've got players like Oscar Bob, Rico Lewis, Edison, Ortega, those sort of players who haven't been in action this summer. A few others, Calvin Phillips is there, James McAtee. I think I saw Callum Doyle on one of the photos as well. There's a mix of players from different places with different points to prove. Si, what can you tell us about players like Phillips, and when can we expect the European players back?
Yeah, Phillips is an interesting one because he's obviously not expected to be part of City's plans for the season, but will be part of their pre-season be part of the group until he's not, basically. He's expected to go on tour with them. Whereas the likes of, say, like Yan Couto and Issa Kabore, who are others who've been out on loan and aren't expected to be part of City's plans this season, I don't think will be part of the touring squad. So yeah, Phillips is still part of the City furniture for now. There's not going to be many players on the squad at all. So the Croatian boys are there because they went out at the group stages, but anyone who went past the group stage at the Euros won't be on tour. So that's your De Bruyne, Doku, Akanji, Ake. Am I missing anyone?
Portuguese.
The Portuguese boys, Diaz and Silva, and Nunes. I think I forgot Nunes when I wrote a piece yesterday. That's good.
There's also Cancelo, who falls into the Phillips category of that as well.
Yeah. So none of those players will be on the tour, and then also Rodri and the England boys as well. So they are getting more than 3 weeks off. They're getting 4 and maybe 5 even in some cases. So not the best news for anyone hoping to see them out in America, but probably Pep would say the right news from a football point of view, because it means that they have more rest ahead of what is going to be the longest season ever.
Yeah, this is it. I think in the next 12 months, is it 80 games they could play in terms of if they play all of the Champions League games, that two-legged playoffs, all of the Club World Cup. It's going to be a long, long season. And I mean, you've got Julian Alvarez, who's just finished the Copa America, got all the way, and now he's going to jet over to Paris and play the Olympics as well. So you can see exactly why they're doing that. And is there any benefit in taking someone out to the US for a week, making them jet lagged, playing 20 minutes against Chelsea and then bringing them back? It's probably not is the answer. So having them back for the week before Chelsea, is it? Community Shield.
Yes, yeah. Remains to be seen when the England boys and Rodri will be back. I think they're having discussions about that, but I mean, I know City will take the Community Shield very, very seriously, as they always do, but they have lost the last 3 in a row, but gone on to win the 3 Premier Leagues. So that would tell you that they get the balance right. when it matters in terms of making sure the players are fit for the most important competitions. So yeah, and it is one of those as well where, you know, I think City have granted all that time off, and some people may choose to turn up before they're supposed to be back if they feel like they want to get back into it and they feel like they're rested. And, you know, I don't think City would say no, stay away, depending on how early it was. But yeah, the club usually give sort of more time off than most of their rivals, and they've done so again with this, really.
It's the price of success, isn't it? When you've got so many players representing their countries, that's a good thing because it shows that you're doing the right thing. But then you need to give them the time off to prepare for the new season.
Yeah, it is, but and not to pick on Arsenal, it's just that I saw the story yesterday on an Arsenal site saying Saka and Rice will be back before the Community Shield. They don't have the Community Shield, obviously, but I think they've got a friendly that week. But yes, I think they're only being allowed 3 weeks off, whereas some of the City players at least will have more than three. So you know, it does risk like a slower start to the season, but City are kind of used to that and used to peaking at the right time.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, especially for players like De Bruyne and I mean you give Rodri as long as he needs, even if that puts the Community Shield and the Chelsea game in the Premier League at risk in terms of
Yeah,
not having him available. I think he's someone that you need to give as much time as possible because he's even now he's saying there's too many games. I'm playing too much.
yeah, and it's also, you know, we sit in enough press conferences where Guardiola complains about the schedule and says there's too many games. So it is fair enough that, you know, he can't do loads about it, but what he is doing is prioritizing their rest where he can and giving them more rest than the regulations say that he needs to, in an attempt to have them as fresh for as long as possible. So, you know, we often criticize managers for hypocrisy? Sometimes we do. But you know, here is an example of them kind of, you know, him putting his money where his mouth is and saying, not only do I think this, but I'm gonna act it as well.
And the majority of these players know exactly what to do under Guardiola. It's not like he's going to be introducing a completely new system. He might have a couple of tweaks up his sleeve to attack the new season, but he's not going to change anything drastically. And I think that is the benefit of having a manager in his eighth season now, because everything works on its own and it just needs reiterating and fine tuning rather than completely ripping up and starting again. I was combing through the social media and trying to find players in the background and which young players were there, and I think I could spot Jacob Wright, Mohamedou Sissoko, Joel Ndala and Nico O'Reilly. That doesn't mean they're the only four players who were training yesterday, but they're four names who you would expect to be on tour. And those two defensive midfielders, Wright and Sissoko, have a chance now because if Rodri's not there, Phillips isn't part of the plans. They've got a chance to get some proper games in pre-season and show Guardiola that they can come off the bench and help here and there or play in the cup and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's one of those. I don't think many fans would be too satisfied if City turned around and said, "And here's your Rodri cover for the season." But they're also kind of unafraid to make those calls. Um, I'm not saying that is the call they will make, but it's not like they've been shopping around massively for Rodri cover and in an enlarged season. You know, I think the academy are going to have to play a bigger role. So yeah, it's a big chance for those two in particular to make their case and show that they can. Because the hardest thing is, I mean, maybe Kovacic will give some help as well, but the hardest thing is playing six on your own. Like Rodri struggled with it a lot when he first came to City, but it was when Rodri was suspended last season that everyone struggled playing six on their own. It's okay playing six next to Rodri because he's the best player in the world, but playing six on your own without him. So it'd be interesting to see if Pep throws any of those young players in immediately as as a lone six, or whether Kovacic kind of has a bit of a role to play as well.
Well, that's probably the benefit of Kovacic going out of the Euros quite early, in that he's the closest replacement you've got. And if you put him in the Community Shield in the first couple of games of the season, you're probably going to do all right. And
Yeah,
Guardiola will have a few weeks to sort of fine tune, because he never looked too comfortable on his own there last season. I'm thinking the 3 games that Rodri was suspended and Phillips didn't take his chance, and Kovacic was it Arsenal where he nearly got sent off and just looked
yeah,
a
should
bit
have been sent off.
stranded.
Yeah,
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 it was that when he hadn't quite got it, but towards the end of the season, you were seeing signs where maybe he's looking good next to Rodri. So maybe I think that's going to be the way he goes forward. But yeah, those two young players do have a chance to show what they can do. And I think O'Reilly he's had a lot of injuries. He's scored some fantastic goals for the youth team, so this could be his chance to make up for lost time. And Darla's a tricky winger and gets fans off the seats, so that could be quite useful on tour when you got these fans who don't see City that often. And I don't want to generalise the American fans, but they like moments, don't they? They like skill and trickery and individuals. So I think he could fit in quite well.
yeah, yeah. It's a neutrals thing, isn't it? It's when you're
Hmm.
sort of not fully wedded to the team, but you like goal mouth action.
Yeah,
And yeah, like you're saying, Darla certainly pacey, tricky winger, and then yeah, O'Reilly has a huge amount of potential. But like you say, a lot of injuries. Been out on a sort of pre-season training camp with James McAtee and a few others. So hopefully he's in the best shape possible to give the best account of himself, because yeah, he's got a lot of talent, and yeah, but feels like yeah, could be a big season for him.
I think it wasn't last season. I think it was season before last. He had a run of I think a couple of games in a month where he scored a scorpion kick in the last minute to win a game, and then lobbed the United keeper from the halfway line. So if you can see those goals, do, because they show what sort of player that City have on their hands. But he just keeps getting those injuries to sort of halt that potential a little bit. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do if given the chance. Before we move on, a bit of change in the academy that I don't think we've spoken about over the last week or so. Barry Murphy has left. He says he wants a new challenge, and it wasn't a great season for the under 21s in the new look Premier League 2 division. Ben Wilkinson has stepped up after winning the Youth Cup and doing very well in the under 18 Premier League, and Oliver Rice has come in from Hertha Berlin to take over the under 18s. What can you tell us about that? The reasoning behind it? Is it as simple as Barry Murphy wanted to move on, or is it that it was just time for a bit of a change?
I think a bit of both, really. I mean, you were around the academy more than I was last season, but it felt like things had got a bit stale with the under 21s. Barry Murphy from the start was not enthused about the changes to the
No.
league position, was he? And yeah, they didn't do very well, and it was obvious from a very early point that yeah, it was going to be a difficult season. But Oliver Rice coming in to take the 18s is kind of a sign of the way Thomas Crooken, as the academy director since November, I think he took charge officially. Um, the changes that he wants to see, um, and also yeah, Richard Dunn and Colo Torre coaching, which less surprising with Richard Dunn, because he kind of started helping with the under 16s in the second half of last season. So he's going to help Oliver Rice with the under 18s. Colo Torre assisting Jamie Carr with the under 16s is really quite surprising. I would say, just because of his previous. He was assistant coach to Brendan Rodgers at Celtic, did very well. Assistant coach to Rodgers with Leicester, and did pretty well. And then had a disastrous 2 months managing Wigan Athletic, where he walked into the club and said, "Yeah, we're going to play pep football. Don't care what players I've got. We're going to play pep football." And it went as badly as you could expect. Didn't win any of his 9 matches in charge. Was sacked, and yeah, not been not been seen really on the coaching scene since. But it's a surprise to go from, a managerial job in the Championship to assistant under 16 coach at Manchester City. But he has got a lot of ties and connections with the club, and clearly likes Pep's style of football.
I wonder if that's what he wants to do. He wants to be a youth coach now. He's had a go at management and been stung by a month in Wigan, and wants
2
a bit more of
months.
a 2 months. Sorry, if he wants that, but yeah, I'd forgotten that he was assistant to a couple of quite big clubs, and then now doing that, because that's gonna be one to watch, I think. Then
Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe he wants to get firsthand, taking whatever tips off Guardiola he can. Maybe he wants sort of to build back his confidence working with players who are used to playing that way and sort of trying to improve them. I mean, I don't think it's a coaching philosophy that's going to go out of style any soon. You just need the right personnel to do it with. But yeah, very interesting one. So it's kind of like, yeah, there's some interesting experience around the academy. And when you speak to Thomas Crooken, because he obviously has returned to City, having coached 20 years ago in the youth team when he was very, very young as a student. Like, Richard Dunn was in the team when he was there. So he, puts a lot of value in City connections. And obviously not only does Dunn have that, but Toure has that. So yeah, more signs of kind of what Thomas Crooken wants.
it's funny. I think when I spoke to Crooken last season when he just took over, he used Dunn as an example of, like, it's different football now. You've not got Richard Dunn smashing into people at centre back, and it's full circle that Dunn is now back teaching those young defenders to maybe not smash into
people.
strikers,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
But I was speaking to a couple of people in Germany about Rice, the new under-18 coach, and they said he's not necessarily the empathetic manager that you get out of Jurgen Klopp, for example, but he's thorough, he's tactical, he focuses on the opposition. He might not be one who sort of puts his arm around the shoulder of these young lads, but he will give them everything they need to approach a game, and he's quite methodical. And he worked with Crooken at, I think, Hertha Berlin quite a few years ago when Crooken was going from around Germany to before he was it Stuttgart that he landed at.
Yes,
Before
yeah.
joining City, he went to quite a few clubs and picked up quite a few contacts in Germany, and Rice was one of them, because I think Rice was there for 15 years or so at Hertha Berlin. So he's highly rated, and it'll be different to Ben Wilkinson from the 18s, but I think it could be quite an interesting development to implement what Crooken has clearly identified as what he wants in terms of a style going through the academy.
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, it's impossible academy football to find like a sort of textbook for what each coach should be. But yeah, no, empathy is will certainly make them grow up fast. I mean, just on a sort of a boring note, it kind of makes sense for the under-18 coach to step up to the under-21s, in the sense that he will probably take his age group with him. So those players will have like the continuity of 2 years under Wilkinson rather than 1 year and 1 year with someone else. So you would maybe hope that, there is more room for progression there. But yeah, I mean, you look at the summer so far, you've made like nearly 50 million off academy sales. So it's still a huge part of, and we've just spent 5 minutes talking about the players that could step up on the first team tour. So, it's still a huge part of the club, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
And that's kind of what makes it such a big appointment, because there is millions of pounds at stake in terms of developing these players. And that will lead us nicely into the final part of the podcast after a short break, where we'll discuss a couple of transfer outgoings and is there any news of incomings. Hi there, welcome back to the Talking City podcast. As we mentioned just before, and I think almost £30 million of transfer money coming into City over the last week or so. Firstly, Sergio Gomez left. Not really a surprise, a slight loss on the money they paid for him, but sell-on clause and the usual clauses that you would expect City to put into a sale. It makes sense that he's gone. He wasn't going to play much this season. I think he played 47 minutes in the Premier League last season, which shows you how far down the pecking order he was.
Yeah, and kind of the fee makes sense because kind of it's not that he's regressed at City, he's just kind of never got going. So he's kind of at the point where he was a 2 years ago, and not that he looks it because he looks like the most English bloke you could imagine, but his reputation in Spain is still very good. I think he did very well at the under-21 championships last year with Spain, playing in a sort of much higher position than left back. And
I think he was joint top goal scorer, or
yeah, that
in the
rings a bell.
conversation for that.
Yeah, and Sociedad had more players in the Euro final than any other club, which was quite amazing. Not starting, but like five players in the Spain squad is really impressive. So yeah, a good move for Sergio Gomez, and another challenge for him to make his way and keep his place in a first team. And yeah, I mean, City will be happy enough with the money they've got for him.
Yeah, they've essentially got back what they paid for him, and a couple of seasons as cover. He came as a City fan. He took David Silva's number 21 shirt. He now follows Silva to Sociedad, even though he's obviously retired Silva. But I think he's one of them where he'll leave with good wishes, and
Yeah,
there's no negativity around it. Just it didn't work, and good luck
yeah,
to him.
yeah, and didn't work, but he still got an assist in a Manchester derby, which as a City fan, he will hold forever as part of that, and won the treble. So not bad, and he was kind of always around the squad because, like you say, there wasn't anything negative about him. He was he worked hard, put the effort in, and didn't complain. So yeah, he will leave with City's best wishes.
I've got a feeling he's going to be one who does quite well for himself in his career. Sociedad seem like a good club for him. He's in the Spain under 20. Is it under 23s, the World Cup? What am I saying here? He's in the Olympic squad for Spain in Paris. So he's still highly thought of, like you say, in the Spain international setup. So I think
Yeah,
he's not going to be one where City have any regrets, but I think he will do quite well in La Liga. Liam Delap is another one. He's gone to Ipswich for up to £20 million, which, as you say, takes the academy earnings this year to around 45-50 million, which I think for the third year running is about the 50 million mark from the academy, which is some going. And Delap has, I'm not going to say he's not done well on loan. He did really well at Hull, but 20 million seems a bit higher than I would have expected. But you look at Cole Palmer, a year after leaving City, he's just scored a goal in the Euros final and won the Young Player of the Year. If you take a player from City, you can develop them and put a lot of value on quite quickly.
yeah, 20 million seems like a promising sign for the market, and especially both. I mean, both Southampton and Ipswich had bids accepted. I think a few other clubs from abroad showed an interest as well. So, yeah, the fact that two promoted teams were willing to pay 20 million is kind of a good sign, I think, for the wider market. And it's kind of where I would put him. It's funny because so City have got 20 million for Taylor Harwood-Bellis, who has had really good years getting Burnley promoted and then getting Southampton promoted, but that was kind of a release clause in an obligation to buy clause in the Southampton loan that was kind of like, well, you kind of get like a cut price for that, because I think Harwood-Bellis would probably be 25 to 30 in a normal market. And with Delap, I feel like he obviously felt more like himself last season at Hull under Liam Rosenior. like a very good team with young players. You've seen a lot of their players either go back to their parent clubs or be sold because they've really impressed. Delap, for me, I didn't follow him too closely, but he seemed to save his best performances for the games on telly, like
Right.
which always helps. And I think he scored against Ipswich. I think he scored against Leeds. Like if you can show that you can do it against the best teams in the division, then that works in your favour. And there's always a premium on strikers. Like if Delap can get close to 10 goals for Ipswich, that could be the difference between them staying up or going down, and then 20 million looks very, very cheap. So yeah, I'm pleased for him because he looked so good. He did burst onto the scene to take from Michael Richards, but his goal on debut was amazing. And he he's a proper big number 9, but he's also intelligent and he matured his game under Pep and Enzo Maresca and people like that. So yeah, things went okay last season on loan, and hopefully can have a good time of it at Ipswich, back to the Etihad for second game of the season. So that'll be one to watch.
He's also got a really good touch, and it's a cliche, but he's got a really good touch for a big man. There's a couple of goals I remember him scoring for the under 21s where he sort of like pirouetted between 3 players and curled it in the bottom corner from 20 yards, and he was unstoppable that season in the PL2, and alongside Palmer and McAtee and Tommy Doyle and that team that won everything and blew everyone away. And I think he won Player of the Year in that division. Struggled a bit at Stoke and Preston, but you've got to go through that to then build on it at Hull, and he's earned his move, and I think he'll be a really interesting one to watch in the Premier League, where he might not get as much chance as he got in the Championship, but if, like you say, he's played for City and scored for City in the big stage, so he's got that ability to do it. So I think he'll be one to watch, and City have got around 20 million in the bank, which is a very good return, and he's one of them that could get them a bit more in the future as well if he goes for a lot more, especially if, say, he does well and but Ipswich get relegated, he could give a bit of a quick return next summer as well.
Yeah, or if Haaland ever leaves City, could be one to return, be the Haaland replacement, the big man up top that they need. Because that's the thing, when he was first starting off, it was like, well, yeah, he's good, but City are playing with a false 9, like they don't need a big number 9. Whereas now, as we've seen at the Euros, and also at City for the last 2 years, big number 9s can be quite handy. So yeah, it'd be worth keeping an eye on him this season, because he has excelled under particular coaches, and Kieran McKenna, I would say, is probably in that bracket. So yeah, he could be a cheap FPL option that proves to
This
be
is what we want.
decent value. Yeah,
Well, given
said it
Haaland's
now.
15
Said it
million,
now,
that's
so score none.
full of exclusives today. You've got Pep to England and Delap to replace Haaland. One more exclusive, please. When is Danny Olmo going to sign for City? When are they going to trigger this release clause?
Oh, never is the answer. I'm trying to, like when people like pull out a house and you feel like there should be more repercussions for them. I sort of want like I want something to happen to his release clause whenever his release clause is meant to end. I want like Leipzig to put out a statement saying, no, his release clause has not been triggered, or X has bought him. I want somebody to buy him, because City aren't buying him, and it's just really boring to wake up every day and see like City going to buy him, City going to trigger his release clause, City going to buy him, City going to buy him. Because yeah, it's not happening. Let's make a good clip when he does sign, though. But yeah, as far as I know, there is no interest at all in signing him, which you might say is a bit of a surprise, because 51 million looks pretty good for a player who's been very good in Spain's run to winning the Euros, and there are obvious links with him having come through Barcelona's academy, and he's been drawn against City in 4 of the last 5 Champions League campaigns, which I find amazing. But also means I am old enough to remember him looking decent for Dinamo Zagreb, and people saying, well, City going to buy him because he's come through Barcelona's system. Pep said a nice thing about him before a Champions League game, so makes sense. And yeah, they didn't buy him then, and I don't think they're going to buy him this time.
That's it. It adds up, doesn't it? They need a player, or they would like a player in that position, and the fee works, and he's Spanish, and he's playing very well. But it needs that final component, which is the most important, of City to
Yeah.
be interested and want to buy him.
Another player, by the way, who doesn't look Spanish at all. Like, if you told me he was Croatian, I would say, yep, come through Dinamo Zagreb's academy as he, absolutely makes sense. But
we need to get 11
yeah,
of Spanish players who don't look Spanish.
yeah.
I'll add Ayazabal, the lad who scored the winner. I don't
Yes.
think he's got
Yeah,
a
him
Spanish
as
blood
well.
in his body.
Yeah. But yeah, when you consider that City bringing Savio in as well, that kind of is another option in attack. That means that they probably don't need to be spending similar money again on another player when they've already got quite a few good attackers.
So pre-season has started, but still no signings, and it won't be Dani Olmo. But we will get a game next week. We will be back on Monday, I believe, before City take on Celtic in the early hours of Wednesday. UK
Yes,
time.
only UK time. It'll be Tuesday night for you, won't it?
Yes, I'll be over there in the US and have a lovely sort of sociable hours of watching that game and in the sunshine. So yeah, you can. I don't actually know what time it is. Is it a midnight kickoff or 1 p.m. this
Probably
time?
something like that.
They're all different times, but yeah.
Yeah, I think they're all midnight or the
Yeah.
early hours, UK time. Yeah, but yeah, no, it should be good in the US.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting, and there won't be all the players, but the players that are there will have there will be a lot of interest around them, and also it's good to have a focus on academy players sometimes, I think, and give them that chance, because as we've said before on this podcast, that Rico Lewis and Oscar Bob have used pre-season to catch the eye of the manager, so it's who's going to do it this time. And yeah, I'll be out there following City throughout their campaign in the States, and we'll be back, I think, before and after every game. We've put plans in for a podcast, so we'll be ramping up our podcasts ahead of the new season, and bringing you all the insights into the camp out in the States. And yeah, City play Celtic next week, and we'll be back on Monday to discuss that, and maybe any transfer news if City bother to make any transfers. But yeah, we'll be back Monday. Give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, wherever you find your podcasts. Thanks for joining us, Si, and we'll be back next week.